Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you for being here today. My name is Abhijit Bhaduri. I work as a talent and branding evangelist. I am the author of the book Career 3.0, which talks about how careers are evolving in this world, which is getting shaped by technology for sure, and which is also, something which connects my guest today with all of you. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of hints to see if you can really guess something about her. But the most intriguing part, when I was talking to her, I realized that she's a person who sleeps for like 3 hours a day. And I don't even know how that's even possible and how you can function. I certainly can't, but we'll find that out. And whether that's a myth or does she really sleep for 3 hours a day. She loves reading, currently tripping on Coldplay, as she said. And the other thing is that she led Intel for many, many years. She led Intel Southeast Asia and eventually came back to lead Intel India and is currently the president, the first woman president of NASSCOM India. So, can you guess who is our guest today? Hey, Debjani, thank you so much for being here and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lovely to be here.
Is it true that you sleep only 3 hours a day?
It's a manufacturing defect, not in my control. It's something that I have lived with all my life. And no, it hasn't killed me till now as yet.
And does it mean that you spend, the rest of the 21 hours in office, or is
Oh, no. Oh, no. The time I do get is spent doing the things I love, reading, mostly reading, listening to music whenever I can. If my family wakes up early, gets me some good time with them too, and of course just my my health regime, my exercise regime, etc. So no, that time is not spent on office.
perfect? So, Debjani, I wanted to start our conversation by asking you about NASSCOM. So this is, of course, the National Association for Software and Services Companies. Is that, is that what? Did I get the full form right?
Yeah, but the full form doesn't matter, honestly, because we've stopped referring it to in the full form. It started off, it's a very interesting story. I think it started off when the overall Indian tech industry was less than 50 billion, also 50 million actually. And the goal was to how do we get to a billion or 10 billion industry. And the leaders who were really visionary at that point in time, Narayan Murthy, Nandan, FC Kohli, all of them, Harish Mehta, who played a key role in pulling all of this together, all of them got together and said, uh, we absolutely can aspire to be a global power, but we cannot do it individually. We cannot do it alone. So we have to get together to make this happen. And that's when around 40 of the leaders of that point in time came together and created NASSCOM as an organization to catalyze the growth, the global growth of tech industry in India. Today, we are very proud to be the voice of an industry that is truly global, that is 250 billion plus and growing, employs 5.4 million people. 38% of which are women, by the way, one something I'm very proud of. And, a little known fact that nearly 90% of Fortune 500 companies work with, rather depend on, the Indian tech industry for their digital transformation. It's all happening here. And today, NASSCOM is the voice of the overall tech industry, the services, products, startups, the multinationals that are working in India, of course, Indian tech. Um, and I see us as a catalyst. Continue to stay a catalyst because that's something we do really well, and also a bridge between the industry and government.
So I'm going to sort of start by looking at, when you look at the industry, from the point of view of talent, opportunities, career, this is going to be a little part of my focus. But before I get there, I wanted to actually ask you that when you were growing up, I mean, what was your aspiration? What did you want to be? Did you want to, be an engineer? Is that what you wanted to be? Doctor, engineer, a chartered accountant. This in India, were the three most sought after roles. So, what did you want to be?
So I grew up I was very blessed to grow up in a completely, at that point in time, you would call it a crazy family, where gender had absolutely no role to play. My father loved to cook. My mother was the person we would go for our science problems. And we never thought of gender having anything to do with how we dream or what we can do, our capabilities. And that was something both my parents were very, very, because I grew up in a joint family with a lot of boys. So my parents were very, very clear that um, who you are, or at least your gender, has nothing to do with who you can be or want to be. And I think what got instilled in my head was, don't get fixated on what you want to be. Get fixated on figuring out your passion. Get fixated on um, going after whatever really gets you going, and get fixated on at least trying to be the best in whatever you do. So I never grew up thinking like I'm going to be an engineer or a doctor. If anything, the only dream was an astronaut at some point in time. I was fascinated with space. So at some point in time, I would have given anything to, become an astronaut. But I never sort of grew up. And I think that helped so much, Abhijit, because too many kids wear these blinkers of, this is what I want to be. And in today's world, where technology is reshaping everything, there's so many new opportunities getting created. And when you wear blinkers, you do not see any of these opportunities. And the good thing was, I think, thanks to my parents, I had I mean, I was able to see a lot of different opportunities. So I finished my MBA, and I took my time and decided I would go into advertising because it gave me a very good understanding of different industries. And I was very blessed, joined Ogilvy, was able to work on a fantastic client like Titan. At that point in time, Titan was, still
Yeah.
growing, and it was early days, and it was fantastic to learn. And then within a year or so, um, Intel happened. And Intel happened in such a strange way. Someone called me and said they're interviewing for people, they need somebody in marketing. Why don't you go? And honestly, I wasn't sure of that time. Technology wasn't my thing at that point in time. I
Hmm.
went in, and for the first time in my life, there was a woman on the opposite side of the table. And she wasn't HR, she wasn't secretary, she wasn't a reception. She was head of global marketing, Asia marketing and sales or something like that. And you say that spark, that career, your ambition suddenly becomes alive. I think that was that moment for me, like, oh my God, if she can do this, I can do this. Right. And Intel happened because of that,
Mm.
because I was just fascinated by what I saw, right? And yeah, and since then, I think technology just became such an integral part of my life. And it wasn't about the silicon, or it wasn't about technology for the sake of technology, but my lens has always been what it can do, what it means to me, what it means to users. And I think that has served me pretty well.
And when you thought about the role at NASSCOM, what did you visualize your role to be before you said yes to it?
Um, so I was, spent 21 years with Intel, and I was in Southeast Asia. I was heading Intel Southeast Asia and doing a very decent job of it. We had grown revenue, and it had become a fastest growing region in APAC, etc., etc. When Intel asked me to come back to India, and they said it's time now to go back, and there's a there's a, well, I call it a joke, but I don't know, it's when I was interviewing with Deborah Conrad, the lady I met at Intel.
Mhm.
She had asked me, "What do you want to be in 20 years?" And I said, "Listen, if I'm going to give 20 years of my life to this company, then by the end of it, I better be the head of this organization, at least in India. I want to head India." So, it was funny because, and that's something that I'd kept as my goalpost right through my career at Intel. And every manager knew that was my dream. I made sure they knew that was my dream. So it was funny because, um, in around 15 years, they called and they said, time to realize the dream and go back and, take on the responsibility you wanted from start. So I came back, and my goal was to, get the job done. And then I wanted to most probably go and work in either China or Latin America. Those two were aspirational geos for me at that point in time. But then the magic of India sort of, completely overtook. And it's fascinating. I mean, India is such a fascinating country. And especially when you are thinking about, or when you are in the technology, in the field of technology,
Mhm.
there is no limit to what can happen. There is no limit to what problems you can solve. So I was getting more and more deeply um, ingrained into the very fabric of India, and how technology gets plays a role in building India of the future, the whole concept of digital India. So what I knew is, this is where I want to be. I don't want to go anywhere. And this is what I want to do. And at that point, one of my mentors, actually a few of two or three of my mentors, Somit, CP Gurnani, who headed Tech Mahindra, and N Chandra, who headed TCS at that point, came to me and said, listen, if this is a dream, you cannot realize the dream sitting in a company. You have to step out of your comfort zone, and you
Mhm.
have to, play a bigger role.
Right.
And there is NASSCOM. Um, there's an opening. They're looking for a new leader. You can go there and do, it's pretty much figure out what you want to do with it. But this is exactly what you can do, make a big difference to the country and the industry. So that's how NASSCOM happened. And again, I had not thought about it. That was not a goal. But that's what I say. When you don't wear the blinkers, suddenly the opportunities come up and you're able to see them.
So, Debjani, I'm going to just, for the benefit of my listeners, I'm going to summarize two of the things that struck me in our conversation. One is, I think I like the idea that when you start off pretty early and decide that, I want to be a doctor or I want to be an engineer, you kind of are, in some senses, working with blinkers, because the world of possibilities is there before you. You don't even know what is being served. So in some senses, the image in my head was, you're getting into a restaurant and you've already decided, I'm going to have a sandwich. You don't even know whether they are serving biryani or they are serving noodles, or is that a Mexican restaurant. So you are deciding something without even being aware of it. So looking at the possibilities, looking at what interests you, what are you prepared for, what is that sector going to do, is one of the ways in which you sort of did that. The second thing that I kind of think, which was quite interesting, is being, the second lesson I took away was that, really, that how do you step away from your comfort zone, because you have a path which is sort of really going very well. In some sense, you wanted to head Intel. That was your dream. You realized your dream. I mean, for most people, once you hit your dream, you just don't do anything to change that, and
Yeah.
you sort of really went and broke the mold, and once again decided to come and sort of really work in that space. When you look at that, that is another fascinating example. 2018, was it, when you joined NASSCOM?
2017. Yeah.
2017. Okay. What did you think the role was, and what do you think the role is today?
See, when I joined NASSCOM, at least I was, as head of Intel India, I was definitely part of NASSCOM EC, so I had that kind of exposure. But I saw NASSCOM pretty much as a lobbying body, right? So that a body that would go and lobby for the industry and fight for visas and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I knew that's not what I wanted to do. I was absolutely very clear that's not what we in NASSCOM should stand for. And at that point in time, a lot was happening in India. The whole concept of digital India was becoming a reality. um, Nandan and his team were working on all, scaling Aadhaar, and it was there was just a lot of different, you know, like magic happening in different places, right? And the one thing I did know is this is the time when um, we can do something big. As an industry, as a country, we can absolutely do something big. And it was about, I mean, for me, it really was about, and this was before the AI hype started, honestly. But thanks to Intel, the foundation had been laid so strong in terms of understanding technology and what's happening. But for me, this was really about frontier technology. And how does India play a role in frontier technology? How does India, I mean, the problems I wanted to solve was how do we get India to be a serious contender in the area of frontier technology, artificial intelligence, blockchain, quantum, blah, blah, blah. How do we get the startup ecosystem in India to be known for its innovation capabilities versus just a number game? Um, and how do we make India almost, I mean, it's always been a dream that the I in India should stand for innovation. And how do we make India a global hub for talent and innovation? So those were sort of the big dreams that I had going into it. And that's what I had told the board, that if I come in, this is what I want to do. I'm not going to be looking at just solving tactical problems that the industry has. And the board support went out of their way to support me and still do. It was just fantastic, and I think that's what we've been able to do to a very large extent.
You talked about really a fabulous vision, moving the role of NASCOM from being completely transactional to something truly strategic for 1.5 billion people, and that's a phenomenal sort of shift of perspective. Uh,
Well,
you
Abhijit,
know,
it's more than 1.5 billion people. Go back to COVID, when the world was shutting down, right? Banks
mm,
were shutting down, hospitals were shutting down. There was one country where the industry was impacted because we had some outdated laws in India which did not allow work from home for a large part of the industry, and the BPM industry, which does a lot of the back end work for the world, was getting impacted. NASSCOM worked with the government, and within a week we got a law changed. you know Within a week we had nearly around 4 million people moving to their homes with 2 million assets. It was just crazy, but it was coordinated to the T. And as the prime minister has very kindly said this, but when the world's lights were about to go out, it was the Indian tech industry that kept the lights on, because we manage the back end of pretty much every company. And I think it's therefore I think the work we do actually has a global impact. It's not just impacting India.
where do you see most of the opportunities? I mean, is it in the startup ecosystem? Is it in the mature services, or where do you see the opportunities today? And if you paint a picture for the next 3 years, um, when somebody is thinking about building their career, what are some of those markers they should be looking at? What are the data points?
The good thing is it's not an either or story, it's an and story. India will continue to have an extremely strong services sector. Complete, and I completely believe in it, that they will continue to grow, they will continue to strengthen, and they will continue to reinvent themselves. That's the if you look at one word that defines, or two words that define the service sector of India, it's adaptability and it's resilience. We are We have been tremendously resilient, and we will continue to stay resilient, I believe. And we have continued to adapt and learn and grow. And I think that's what we will do, as what we are doing in the face of this huge transformation that's come our way, opportunity that AI has brought into the game. The startup sector in India is growing tremendously strong. As a tech sector, I mean, I think we are the third largest tech startup hub in the world. The deep tech sector is small, but it is growing, and it is very exciting. The kind of work that's going on there, from drug development to agri, it's just amazing innovation that is going on. So there's tremendous opportunity, and then of course there's a nascent product sector which is also growing. So I think in India, the good part of it is, one, if you're just thinking about the tech sector, um, there are so many good options for you. And then let's not forget that today every company is a digital company.
True.
Every company needs data scientists, data analysts. Every company needs cybersecurity experts, whether you're a bank or a hospital. So if you're building your foundation in this area, the opportunities honestly are limitless. And I keep advising kids, don't think that I'm going to be in the tech sector. You know, whatever your passion is, if your passion is coding, or if your passion is in cyber, in security, be the best, build that those expertise capabilities, and don't worry about which sector. Find the best opportunity you can get.
When uh, when somebody is looking at the choices in the next 3 years, are there sectors which are going to grow faster than the others? So whether, and by that I mean, would you suggest that somebody looks for more opportunities in healthcare related technology, or banking and finance? Is that going to grow faster? Do you have a point of view about that, or is it going to be agnostic of sector, is going to boom in India any which way?
Yeah, I don't think about the sectors. I think it's going to be agnostic because there is so much to be done in every one of these areas. So when at least when I talk to students, my advice or my suggestion is very simple. Don't worry about the sectors.
Hmm.
Uh, first, first thing, just build those what we used to call soft skills, but I think today they are the most critical skills. I mean, how good a problem solver are you? How can your ability to identify problems, your ability to uh, put that vision out, communicate and get people, influence people to come and work with you to solve that problem. Your ability, therefore, your ability to collaborate, all of this is so critical. And second, build a strong foundation. STEM is a must. Now you have to build a foundation with whether it is data science. I strongly believe that helps tremendously, whatever field. Building a foundation of just understanding of security is so important because it goes hand in hand. So whether you're a coder or whatever, the security protocols are a must in your job. So I think build a strong foundation of the core technologies, and it's not going to be about one technology. It's going to be about your ability to orchestrate the different technologies to solve the problem in the best possible way. And then, yes, if you truly are passionate, because there's some kids who will come and say, I really want to do something in health, or I really want to do something in agri, then build the domain knowledge. It's very important to understand the core business model of that sector and what are the challenges, because then you can apply your problem solving skills to it to add value. So I have a little different way of looking at it, but I think the foundational skills are way more important than thinking about which sector do I want to be in.
So what I hear you say is, first build anything to do that involves working with people, so the people skills, and then you kind of look at getting an overview of, some of the digital skills, because every company is going to become a tech company in some shape or form. And then you kind of really also build deeper understanding of the domain. So that, when combined, creates a very powerful resume that opens the door for you. I
The
want
only
to.
thing I would add to that is not just the people skills, that is very important, but I think the problem solving skills. We are all
Mm.
born with curiosity, right? And then we lose it in our education system. So how do you rekindle the curiosity, and not just being curious, but having the courage and the conviction to do something about it? I think that thankfully we're seeing it in this generation. We're seeing it in the young generation. So that's something that I think that has to be the one job of education system. We have to rekindle that fire. We have to rekindle that spark in every child.
And I think along with that, this core belief that the entrepreneurial spirit, that I will start to do something and I have a dream and I'm not going to wait for somebody else to create exactly that product and then I'll join them, but I'll build that thing. So I think
Yeah,
that's the other piece I would add to it.
absolutely.
Fabulous. I'm going to sort of take a different track and ask you to actually explain for the benefit of the audience what has been the kind of a shift in the Indian tech industry when you look at that landscape. Like you've got the awesome digital infrastructure and all the plumbing is now there and all of that. If you just simplify the history and explain for the people how should they understand what has happened, what is happening today, and what is the way forward, that would be really terrific.
So let me talk about digital India and not just the tech industry. The tech industry is an enabler of digital India. But the first thing about India is everyone honestly is a digital native. If you look at survey after survey that looks at how countries or citizens are afraid of technology, you will always find India lowest in the ranking in terms of fear of technology. Old or young, we sort of take to technology like fish takes to water. For whatever reason, we take to technology very fast. So if you want to visualize digital India, I use this little example and story because I saw this and it's something that is always stay with me. We're driving through one of the small towns of India. There was this woman sitting on the road. She had a mat spread out and she was selling vegetables there, right?
Mhm.
Very
Mhm.
fresh vegetables, etc. And when it came to completing the transaction, she was not accepting cash. She was putting up a little board with a QR code, and the people would take their phone out, scan the QR code, and it was done. And this image has stayed with me because this is digital India, where it's about the last mile.
Mm.
And this is what's different about India, and many people do not get it. When we innovate in India, and especially when we are thinking about public infrastructure, we are not innovating to solve the problems of the top. We are innovating to solve the problems at the grassroots and then scaling it up. Every digital public infrastructure that India is building is built on the design principles of open, interoperable,
Mhm.
ecosystem led, and secure by design. Right? What happens when you apply these design principles is you break monopolies. So you are creating a system where everyone can play. Think about UPI, our
Mhm.
unified payment infrastructure, right? Um, it's the world's largest financial inclusion platform. I mean, billions and billions of transactions every month. The beauty of UPI is everyone can play. There's Google, there's Paytm, a small startup. It's amazing to see, and I think it only happens in India, where Google is actually competing with the startup when it comes to the number of transactions, right?
True.
And because of the digital public infrastructure which government creates, think of it like a highway. It's
Mhm.
a highway that has been created. Now, what it does is it democratizes data access, it democratizes market access. Now, you come in with your innovation, and as if your innovation is good, it doesn't matter how big or small you are going to win. Right. And this is amazingly unique. And, I give a lot of credit not just to our government, but also people like Nanda and Pramod Varma, Dr. Pramod Varma, who were all
Yeah,
involved in coming up with this design. But
absolutely.
this is fabulous because what this has done is this has enabled population level scale of technology. And
Correct.
this is something, again, you do not see in any other country, where billions of people are using technology for financial inclusion, for vaccination, for education, for healthcare, etc., for travel, right? And I think this is the principle we really want to take forward, even when there's so much of thought on artificial intelligence and risks and what it means. I mean, I look at it from the lens of opportunity. Of course, oversight is needed, but I also think we will be in a very good place in India, because if we apply these design principles and create a truly open ecosystem led framework for deployment of AI at, at scale, um, I think we will have the answer to unlocking the full potential of AI for inclusive economic growth. And that's what excites me the most about India.
And I also think that the fact that the kind of scale that is possible in India, anything that you do, you launch it in a small city, you get millions of people, and that's a unique opportunity that you have.
Only if the technology is trusted. Let's not forget that. There's
Hmm.
so many things that are launched and do not scale, right? And I think this is where the design principles do matter. Because when you are building for trust, when you're building for scale, the first thing you have to do is build for trust, because
Trust.
scale does not happen without trust. Trust does not happen in a closed ecosystem. Trust happens when you open it up. Trust happens when the entire ecosystem comes together to play. Trust happens when you are accountable and transparent about how you're building the stack, right? So this is something we often ignore, but this, I think, is the secret sauce of India's success.
Yeah, I would agree that you can design something. Adoption is really entirely a function of trust. If people don't trust the technology, it doesn't matter who's offering it. So that's going to really be a defining factor of adoption, and that to adoption at scale, I think it matters even more. You
Yeah.
should look at that. So we've now been in a situation where the tech stack has been built. So you've got the UPI for payments, you've got the biometric system in Aadhaar cards, which sort of verifies who you are, your identity management system, and then you also have the sort of all the data
Data
costs
layer.
being
It's,
dropped.
it's, it's your identity, KYC, and your data layer, which has come together.
So, when you look at this, what is the next phase now, especially in a world which is getting shaped by generative AI? What is going to be the next phase for India to build its competitive advantage?
So I think the first thing we have to figure out is, how do we build an UPI for every other sector? We've really cracked it for financial inclusion, and to a large extent for healthcare. How do
Mhm.
we do the same for agri? What is that? And I think there's a lot of work going on, and hopefully something soon will come out of it. But how do we do this for agri? How do we do this for, I would even take it to core sectors like manufacturing, which is so important. Uh, Artificial intelligence, the way we see it, or the way I see it, artificial intelligence is a tool. And we have to figure out how do we best apply this tool to ensure that we develop a layer of intelligence
Mm.
into the stack, into every level of the stack, uh, primarily to ensure that we um, make the technology much more intuitive, much more intelligent, and also uh, much more inclusive, because we are dealing with the issue of multiple languages, culture, etc., etc. And I think this is where the capabilities of AI can tremendously come into play in India. right? And it has to be, I mean, for me, AI stands for augmented intelligence. I'm very clear on that. And I do believe that um, somehow the global AI narrative, and I don't know the reason, I mean, I really don't understand it, has underplayed the role of human ingenuity and human creativity and accountability. And I think that is very dangerous. And that's something I do not want to see happening in India. The age of AI is, frankly, I believe it'll shine the light much more on human accountability and human ingenuity. It has to, for us to get it right. And I think that's where I want to see India take the lead. So as we are thinking about deploying the stack to solve mega problems across sectors, I think how artificial intelligence can come in to enable us do that better, bigger, safer, is the role that it has to play.
And what you were talking about building trust, and you were talking about the human factor being more prominent than the tech factor. It reminded me of, I just met the president and CEO of Society for Human Resource Management, Johnny Taylor, and he uses a phrase which is AI plus HI, which is human intelligence, is equal to ROI. So it's similar that you're really talking about putting the human first, to be able to use technology as an enabler and then do that, whatever that technology could be.
Yeah.
Today it's generative AI, tomorrow it could be something else. And how do you build that? When you see the big problems to be solved, uh, you know, one of the big problems, in my view, is going to be about how do we upskill people from the point of view of leveraging the opportunities that AI is going to create. So when you look at that, yeah, and one of the beliefs I have is that the role of the government in creating jobs per se for everybody, I mean, I think it's a thing of the past. It'll be something completely different, and
Yeah.
people will need to, start to be more entrepreneurial on that. How do we prepare for that future? What is your roadmap? If I were to ask you, how would you advise us?
So, you know, since, if you talk about supply chain risks, and that is one of the big topics right now in terms of supply chain resilience, that's top of mind for every CEO. I think the talent shortage is one of the biggest risks to supply chain resilience globally. And the numbers are amazing. I mean, yeah, I think I'll lose even my 2 or 3 hours of sleep when I usually do when I read these numbers, like 85 million people short by 2030, right? It's just crazy. The numbers are crazy. And I think we have to start getting realistic about the problem, the pace at which technology is changing. Can we honestly keep up with that pace of change with respect to our skilling efforts? I mean, think of a normal skilling effort and how much time it takes to really get someone to a certain level of expertise, not just skilling them for the sake of skilling them, right? But doing a good job.
Yeah.
Uh, Humans learn differently. We take time to learn, most of us, right? So I think the big problem is complete miss the disruption that's happening with respect to the pace at which technology is moving and the pace at which we humans can learn. I think that's a huge problem. And I think, at least I don't know the right answer honestly, but in my mind, I think this is where status quo is totally not going to cut it. We will always be left behind. So we have to think about things differently. And one of the things, at least I think about, is what if we started using technology better to solve for this problem? For example, again, I go back to what I said. What if we focused really on what I call the foundational skills? Problem solving, people skills, collaboration, um, foundation or technology skills, etc., etc. If you're equipped with these skills, and of course the most important skill is the ability to unlearn and learn, right? That is That is key. Everyone has to. If you can't do this, I have no idea how anyone's going to survive. You have to be able to learn. And if you're able to do it, then we can use technology to bridge that gap. So for example, if you're a coder today, you have to also sort of be a security expert, because it's very important for you to start thinking about the security protocols from the time you start developing your code and algorithm, right? Now, do we take all the millions and billions of coders and get them into a crash course to learn how to become security experts? Or do we maybe create AI assistant that is that security expert and that can work with the coders right from start to ask to act as an assistant and help them build in the protocols as they're developing? The same applies for domain knowledge. Can we create a healthcare expert that will work with the tech um, workforce to ensure that they have the right domain expertise at their tips? I think Satya Nadella said this, and I cannot agree with more. AI is about expertise at our fingertips. That is what AI means to me, right? That's the biggest value of AI. So we have to now figure out how do we leverage this. And we, rather than try and skill everyone to be the ultimate expert in everything, can we build a very strong foundation of people who are well versed in technology, know how to use it, can learn quickly, and can work with these tools to solve for these problems? That's the future I see. I see a future where it is going to be about human plus AI assistance in whatever job you are doing. And I think that we know what skills are needed to make that work.
So, in my book, Career 3.0, the first two skills that I talk about are that one, are you able to learn things that you have not been formally taught? How do you learn that? Things that were not part of the
Yeah.
curriculum when you were a student. How do you continue to sort of learn yourself? So that's one skill. Two, proof of your proficiency in learning is you are able to teach somebody. So how do you teach someone? Because that forces you to simplify it, and now you can teach someone. It also solves another problem, which is that how do you scale up this knowledge and sort of say that, so you have the AI assistant, and you also have the human coach who's able to sort of work with groups. And we've seen the value of that, across. So when you look at the role of organizations in skilling, and if you were advising the CEOs of organizations, uh, s- what would you advise them to rethink about the way they invest in skill development for their employees? How would you advise them to shift it so that you know they can come together to build a stronger foundation?
So this is actually a conversation. It's ongoing. I'm having it with pretty much all the leaders. Um, we have to integrate skilling into your core job function. It can't be that extra thing you do before your performance review or whatever to get the ticks done, that okay, I have done taken these 3 courses, right? Which is always how we have traditionally approached skilling. This has to get integrated pretty much into your core job function, where and skilling will take different shapes. There's one skilling on the job, you learn while you are doing. Um, others is where you learn from your network, your mentors and coach, and of course there's skilling through formal courses, etc. um, but this is something that I think has to be part of every job description and how we write it out. The importance of learning and the importance of staying relevant with trends, changing trends, etc. It's something most job descriptions do not have. They do not talk about it. And
Agreed.
I think we have to first make that change, because a lot of it is driven by what is, I mean, I'm so tired of hearing that that was not included in my job scope. or that is above my pay grade. That is not something. We have to change that. We really have to change that, where learning has to pretty much become an integral part of what you do and your success.
Hmm.
So that's a conversation I actually have with every CEO. Um, None of us know have cracked figured out how exactly to get it done, but there are a lot of good conversations, and I think we'll figure it out.
When you think, uh, so this is what you're talking to organizations as to how they should be investing and prioritizing and really changing their approach to upskilling. But if you talk to individuals, if I were to ask you, what can I do as an individual to upskill myself? What would you advise differently? What do you think I should be doing differently?
I'll talk about myself, right? As I told you in the beginning, when I joined Intel, I couldn't spell technology. I was an economics major, marketing, and uh, two things I realized very soon, thanks to some brilliant mentors at Intel and brilliant leaders at Intel. One, if you are different, it's your biggest advantage, because when you're different, the world looks at you with a lot of curiosity, and you have their attention. So it's up to you how you want to use that attention, and you can use that attention well, um, only if you're fully prepared. So be ready to burn the midnight oil and be ready to learn, right? um, if you are prepared, and I actually take my gender and everything as the biggest advantage that I have, because yes, when I walk into room, people do look up and say, like, how, what, representing head of NASSCOM. Okay, and it's fantastic because that bias lasts for all of 1 minute, right? When you start talking, the bias goes away, but again, that depends on how well you're prepared. So one, there is no shortcut to learning, to hard work. That is my mantra. Even now, you ask what I do with the hours that I save by when I don't sleep, it goes into that. And there's always something to learn. Now the best way for me to learn is, I have a fantastic group of people, um, who are really good at what they do, and in my team as well as in the ecosystem. And I make sure, I mean, those are the meetings I will never miss. Though they are structured, I will make sure I continue to talk to them, because for me, the best way to learn is to understand based on how things are being applied, the real stuff. So one, that. Two, listening to podcasts. I do a lot of that, because in Delhi, when you live in Delhi, you are stuck in a lot of traffic, and you're always traveling. Those my car, my whenever I'm in a car, those whatever how many ever hours I spend go in listening to podcasts, because they're fabulous way to learn. And last, of course, my very own passion, which is reading. Um, Today in India, when people want to talk about artificial intelligence, etc., I feel very humbled and blessed that they come and talk to me. And my knowledge is from what I have taught myself, by talking to people, by listening to others, by reading. So there's no magic answer. It is a lot of hard work, but if you begin to enjoy the process, then it's the best thing you can do.
What are some of the podcasts that you listen to? What are, quick two or three names?
One of my favorites is the All In, because I just find them very honest in whatever they're saying. I may not always agree with them, but I do, and I love the points of view. And Friedberg is absolutely my favorite. So All In is good. I like Lex Friedman. Um, um, that's another one that I really like. I also watch a lot of the recent Jensen Wong at Stanford. Oh, what a fabulous session that was. Um, again, as I told you in the beginning, I'm a Gemini, so I don't have fixed, and I just don't have any fixed likes or dislikes or ideas, right? If I hear of something good, I'll go and catch it. I caught a few of yours when you reached out to me. Loved it. Loved the different discussions you have, and especially on skilling, which I think is so important. So yeah, I'm always looking for ideas and recommendations.
So that's really, to me, the sign of a curious mind, that you're really gathering ideas from a variety of sources. And what a great time to be alive, that you can actually hear the wisdom of all these guests.
Yeah,
And I will also say that, yes, I know that you were recently in conversation with Thomas Friedman,
yeah.
the Nobel Prize winner, and just
He's one
so
of my favorites. He's absolutely
completely.
one of
So
my
what did
favorites.
he talk to you about? Tell us about that.
So he was in India for an event or something, and he's a great friend of NASSCOM's. So whenever he comes here, he's just so generous. He with his time. He always gives us time to, and we love to, just get him in a room, bring some of our deep tech startups, founders, and sit down and talk. And it was fascinating, right? Because he listens. Tom's biggest, I think, strength is his ability to listen, and it's just a man. Then he connects it back to all sorts of things. So it's a great opportunity for him to, I think, to listen to these young founders and the problems they are working on, what are they solving, and then beautifully connect it back to technology, to what's geopolitics, to what's happening around the world, and of course India. So it was just a fascinating conversation. Again, as you might have guessed by now, I'm not a person who's fond of boundaries. I can't work with boundaries. So it was, when with Tom, there are never any boundaries in your conversations, right? It sort of goes with the flow. So we started with deep tech, then we went quickly into AI and what's happening in the world of AI. Why is it happening? And then how is India looking at AI? And what does all of this mean from the global geopolitic dynamics that we are seeing? It was truly fascinating.
When you look at the startup ecosystem in India, where do you see the roadmap? What are some of the things that you expect to see happening? Because there are some startups that are just beginning. Some of them are, they are in their way to maturity. They've built a certain kind of a product value. Um, where do you see possibilities emerging? What do you think of those?
um, See, with the young population we have, I think entrepreneurship is going to be the future, because thankfully we don't just have a young population, but we have a young population that is growing confident by the day, that is growing up with technology, that is seeing India use technology to solve really big problems. um, and somewhere we are doing something right, because I see them getting more and more curious by the day. So I think that's absolutely fabulous. So entrepreneurship, I think, is going to be the natural outcome, as you think about how do you put this demographic asset to work, right? How do you get the most out of it? um, it's amazing, Abhijit, that we have. I look at only the tech startup ecosystem, and of the 30,000 or tech startups that we have in India, it's amazing to see of the new startups that are coming up, more than 40% are coming up from tier 2, tier 3 cities. So entrepreneurship is not just restricted to the Bombays and the Bangalores of the world. Now people from Jaipur, Indore, uh, the smaller cities of India are aspiring to become entrepreneurs. Um, there's no shortage of problems to solve. Thankfully, we are blessed with enough big problems to solve. So there's no shortage of problems. And I think this is a huge advantage we have over Silicon Valley, where we have very real problems to solve, right? What is needed now is really building that strong capabilities in the digital mastery, in their
Mhm.
ability to use technology to solve for these problems, their ability to the softer skills. So I actually feel tremendously hopeful about the entrepreneurship ecosystem in India. How's it growing? As NASSCOM, we have decided to focus now really on the deep tech ecosystem, because that's still very nascent, around 3000 deep tech startups, but has tremendous potential, and has tremendous potential to contribute to India and the world
Mhm.
because of the problems they can solve. Um, and and we have to get the framework right in India in terms of ensuring we have more patient capital to solve for some of these big problems, and not just the flavor of the month. Funding goes often towards the flavor of the month. So how do we ensure we have serious capital, patient capital, we build that in the country to solve for some of these big problems? How do we ensure that, and a Ministry of Education is now working with the IITs to come up with a entrepreneurship curriculum, which I'm, I'm very privileged to have been part of in terms of uh, that entire initiative. Um, Government of India, the Ministry of Electronics, works with NASSCOM to run a very unique initiative, which is Future Skills Prime, which I think is the only one of its kind globally. It's a public-private initiative to digitally scale millions and millions of youngsters in India, and we are skilling them on foundational tech, we are skilling them on deep tech, we are skilling them on these soft skills. And it's fantastic because the way we do it is we are not creating the curriculum, we are bringing in industry comes in with their curriculum, with their expertise. Government comes in with frameworks like the credit framework, where they accredit a lot of the curriculum that industry brings in, and then scaled out to universities. So it is, I think there's a lot going on in this space to build the capabilities. So if we have the talent, we want to strengthen the capabilities, we have amazing problems to solve, we have the advantage of scale, we have the advantage of um, people believing that technology helps and not being afraid of it. So so yeah, I think all the pieces are coming together for um, even more amazing opportunities.
I certainly can't think of a better person to represent that dream for India than you, who has
You are
so
very
much
kind.
passion about what you just said. I want to sort of end by asking your advice for people in three different stages of their career. People who are, and I want to start with people who are highly experienced, who spend more than 20 years working, and who are kind of, at fairly established positions in their careers. What can they do to, build their skills? And your advice to them for the next 5 years. And then we'll come to the mid level and the people who are getting started. So,
So I fall in that category, and I feel we are at the highest risk. We are the high risk sector, because often, I know most of us have had very successful careers, and often when you look back at the success, you don't want to change because it has worked for you till now, and success becomes your biggest downfall. And I think it's very difficult for people in that age group, that level of experience, to you know get rid of all the legacy baggage that we carry with us about how it's done and how it's supposed to be and how great I am, and actually go back to saying, I'm at risk of just losing complete relevance. And I think that is a true risk, and I think this is the sector I worry the most about. um, I- it's not about how you learn. I think all of us have different ways of learning. I think
sure.
it's about getting over that that mindset barrier that we all have with respect to we are established. I hate that word, by the way, Abhijit. What does it even mean? And I
Yeah.
think it does so much harm than good, right? None of us are established. We are all in an infinite game. The goalpost is continuously moving, and now our competition is coming from people who can learn way more quickly than we can. So I think we really have to be on our toes.
What I heard you say is people who are really highly experienced, who have put decades of work, they are most at risk in terms of becoming irrelevant, whatever number of years they look ahead. And that's the scariest part, I would think, that people as they say that, well, I'm very close to retirement and I think I'm going to be able to just sail through on sheer momentum. It's not going to work like that. And B, I also think, as I was doing the research for my book, all of us are going to live much longer than what we anticipated earlier when we started a career. And therefore this whole notion of retirement is, I think, going to go away. And already you see signs of that happening in different countries. The governments are pushing back retirement age in many of the countries. You see what's happening in France, you see what's happening in Germany, many of these places, because people are really going to be healthy enough to work for much longer. So this whole notion of
And whether you're retired or not, retirement doesn't mean anything to me, right? It's just uh, there's a life after retirement, and and I have seen people in my ecosystem who are doing better work than they have ever done post retirement.
true.
They're advising, they're on boards, they're doing such amazing work. So I don't think retirement has anything to do with our ability to contribute and our willingness to contribute. But what definitely will either limit or significantly enhance our contribution is our ability to learn.
And what is your advice to people who are in the early stages of their career? What should they do to stay relevant?
you know you have to make technology your best friend. You have to um, it doesn't matter whether you think you are going to join an NGO, as a non-profit sector, or you are going to join politics, or you're going to become a doctor or whatever. But it, the only way you can be the best is if you have the right level of expertise, and your assistant, your tech assistant, AI assistant, or whatever is what is going to be able to provide you with that expertise. I think you have to understand that, and you have to really embrace that. And so therefore, the and technology is forever changing. The only way you can stay current is if you learn every single day and unlearn what you had learned till day before. So I think that becomes so, so, so important. And the second thing I would say is um, focus on solving big problems. That is whether you are in a corporate, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you are in government. Your goal should be, what kind of impact can I create? And I always say this to my team also. All of us will leave or go on to do something else at some point in time, and I have done this for even 21 years at Intel, but lots of different roles and jobs. And every time I left a role to go on to something else, I would always look back to see what's the legacy I'm leaving, however small. But did I change anything, right? And if you didn't, it is just such a waste of your time. And how much time do we give our work, right? So there should be something that you have impacted. So look for making that impact, that problem, which is where the problem solving comes into play. And the third thing is, you can only go alone so far. It's really about you if you stand on the shoulder of giants, you will take huge leaps. So find those giants and build that team, build the ecosystem that will take you forward.
Devjani, thank you so very much. I mean, I so resonate with the way that you are thinking about it, and I'm so glad that you are leading that revolution for India. It's such a privilege to have you talk to my audience, and those of you who haven't done so. I really say follow Debjani on Twitter and connect with her on LinkedIn. And thank you once again for being here today. All the very best for your dreams. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Abhijit. Lovely talking to you.